Welcome everyone. My name is John and I'm part of the marketing team here at Wavelink. Today's InfoByte session is Fortinet's value prop. To navigate a customer conversation with the ins and outs of cybersecurity can often prove tricky. So this session was designed to break through the industry lingo and help you create meaningful conversations with your customers, both prospective and current. Outside of this session, we do have 3 additional InfoByte series coming up in May. So the next one is on the 6th, which is VPN and remote networking. The next 2 is around FortiWeb, and we're going to be hosting a sales and marketing edition on the 19th of May. And after that, we'll be hosting a technical version, diving a little bit deeper into FortiWeb, and that's on the 26th of May. Just some housekeeping before we kick off. At the conclusion of the presentation, we'll be joined by Rod Christie, who is our resident Fortinet guru. Rod has more than 20 years experience across Australia and New Zealand as a network engineer in sales. Rod was previously senior channel sales engineer at SonicWall and a solutions architect for communications design and management. He also held roles at Ingram Micro and APN Holdings. We love questions. Well, Rod loves questions. So please use the questions box within the toolbar, in which we'll address at the conclusion of the presentation. In saying that, we'll kick off and we'll see you all again shortly. Thank you.
So everyone, we've got here the, second continuation of what we did in last quarter for our InfoByte series, which is around positioning Fortinet. So this one I've called level 2, which is comparing security strategies. So those who attended the previous session will remember that we've got the Australian Signals Directorate, or the Cybersecurity Council, and their Essential 8. You've probably heard it 1,000 times, but it really is important to know these, because what these are built around is about making sure a small business has the protection they need against cybersecurity. So jump onto ABC News, have a look at the current articles that are out at the moment around cybersecurity, around the threats that's currently happening, especially during the pandemic. You've got the MyGov website, where people are having their identity stolen and then having their tax returns stolen. You've got people getting early access to Stupa, so having the Stupa ripped out from their accounts because people are doing identity fraud. And then obviously the big elephant in the room, which is that some international governments are commissioning potentially their own cyber teams, and they're going out trying to find a cure to COVID. So having these Essential 8 is what the Australian government recommends is the bare minimum to protect your business. So Fortinet, as you know, for these 8 here, do cover everything here, except for around backups. Obviously, backups is more around your data integrity for your file, but you can still do backups of your security configs, which is very important in case you do get attacked. So when we look at a sort of small to medium-sized business, their current infrastructure is generally that they have a lot of vendors, because they had in the past looked at best of breed. So the best of breed was all well and good in the past, but a lot of those vendors now have potentially been bought up by some of the biggest security vendors. The other thing that may have occurred as well is that they've probably fallen behind in their R&D research. So Fortinet is in the top 3 global security vendors with Palo Alto and with Cisco. And then that way, if you look at a single vendor strategy inside with Fortinet, then you're going with the best. You can get too many alerts when you've got sort of disassociated infrastructure. So having too many alerts means it becomes a boy or girl who cries wolf, and you may not necessarily look to see if it's actually something serious you should follow up. With Fortinet and a single vendor strategy, you get a single pane of glass, which allows you to actually look across all the different systems raising the alerts, and then has the ability to speed up your response with machine AI and also policy syncing as well. So any slow or expensive manual response to those too many alerts across too many vendors is then automated through that machine AI and single pane of glass. And finally, you can reduce your training and overhead costs. So whether you've had to reduce your staff because of COVID, or maybe because you just wanted to sort of save some costs for your business, you can have less people in your team, and then their training is faster because the ease of use of FortiOS and the ability of having your wireless, your switching, your firewall, as well as your endpoint, all from a single vendor who has a really great learning portal, which is training.fortinet.com, means that you can have a sort of some cost savings there with the single vendor strategy. So let's have a look at what it looks like implemented in an office. So this is your standard office, and if we want to sort of deploy the essential 8 within this office, what will we need? So the first thing we'll need is obviously a firewall router. Then we need a 4G modem, whether that's because you can't get MDM to site or it's still running on ADSL, or maybe you can't afford to run fiber, but most importantly, it's for a backup, so normally a 4G backup. Then you need a wireless access point for mobile devices that don't have an Ethernet port, and then you need a PoE switch or potentially just a switch there for your wired devices, normally around that legacy side as well. Perhaps you've got an old printer that only runs on the wired connection. Then you need some endpoint protection for your actual computers, your server, as well as your mobiles. You'll need multi-factor authentication as per the Essential 8 for your password hardening. Then you'll need some email protection because a lot of the actual breaches that come through is from phishing links. So you'll need some form of email protection. The one that comes with Office 365 is good, but if you've got an older domain, it's really not the best. So then you've got some surveillance cameras. That's for work health and safety, but also to protect the physical security of your assets, especially those things in your data rack as well. And then you've got cloud management. So this allows you to get your alerts when you're not necessarily in the office or connected to the VPN. And then finally, it always helps to have Australian support. So whether that's for hardware replacement so that you can get your parts shipped and replaced within a reasonable amount of time so that you're not down with your different bits of products, but also if you've got local people who speak your local language. So if you do have an issue, then you can get some support in your language as well. So if we could then compare some of the top security vendors and how they actually rank in terms of a percentage score, to see what they offer from a single pane of glass management, plus the type of security they have for that SMB suite. So if we look here, obviously everyone talks about Cisco Meraki. They are the #1 on most of the lists, and as you can see, they're actually got the full completeness there. So Palo Alto, Checkpoint, Aruba, Sophos, SonicWall. People always talk about sort of those different vendors. They come up against them in the channel. So if you actually look at it here, really only Cisco Meraki offer that 100% suite along with Fortinet. So all the other vendors, when you actually break down from that SMB suite, they're really only sort of scraping around that 60% mark in terms of what they can offer. And again, if we look furthermore into what are the awards that they're actually getting, so what are the certifications, what is the third-party evaluation of how good their products are? Well, on the ICSA Labs, they've got 5 certifications awarded to Fortinet, with the closest being SonicWall with 2. For the NSS Labs, you've got 9 from Fortinet, and Palo Alto only receiving 4 as the closest. Next competitor, Cisco, as you can see there, even though they've got 100% of the stack, he's only got 2 independent assessments from NSS and none from the ICSA. And then this is an interesting one from AB Comparatives. So this is to do with email security and endpoint security. So of the tests they ran in 2020, 767 malware samples were pushed through, and then ESET was able to stop 99.6%, missing 3. And then you can see there Cisco actually missed 10 of the AB samples that were put through, whereas Fortinet actually blocked 100%. So that's another thing to as well look at in terms of the awards, which is the protection testing. So again, the form factors that exist. So a lot of people sort of will say, yeah, I'll just take a VM license, I'll get a VM license. But a lot of the small businesses and medium-sized businesses want the flexibility of not necessarily having hardware, or they don't have a server that's VM capable. So what they're looking at instead is something, what can Fortinet host it for us? Or we're running everything out of Azure or AWS. Are we able to plug something in from the marketplace? When it comes to Fortinet, the answer is yes. So we can have your huge Australian footprint here with your data center rollouts, with your hardware, with your shipping, offices in different states, and then there's some faces and names of the people that are here within Australia, 130 people nationwide. And all of these offerings, all of this breakdown, all this Australian support is then summarized in this particular SMB offering. So you've got the FortiGate, FortiExtender, FortiAP, FortiSwitch, FortiClient, FortiToken, FortiMail, FortiCam, FortiCloud, FortiCare. So all 10 of those allow you to cover the essential 8 as recommended. And then if you do need to go up and you need to increase sort of that specialization, you can add more with FortiNAC, FortiSandbox, and obviously FortiClient and FortiToken do upgrade to FortiAuthenticated and FortiEDR. And your FortiCloud, if it's not sufficient, can sort of break them down into the individual FortiManager and FortiAnalyzer. And then if you really want to go into that sort of upper level echelon of the enterprise space and you have a specialized security requirement, you can get things like FortiDeceptor, FortiDDoS, FortiSOAR, as well as FortiCASB if you have a really heavy dependence on sort of cloud services such as Salesforce or Dropbox or Office 365. And again, there are those form factors down there, the appliance, software, virtual machine hosted in cloud. And what we've also got as well is this particular strategy. So on the slide, you saw that you've got the option of different vendors in your mix. So what about Cisco being 100% across all your different offerings? You've got what we call Fabric Ready. So Fabric connectors that are actually built into the FortiOS, which allow you to integrate in different ways the security that is offered by the other vendors into that Fortinet single pane of glass. So you don't necessarily have to go to your clients and say, look, we need to rip and replace everything with Fortinet. And especially if you've got something like Cisco, you don't actually necessarily need to rip all the Cisco out and replace it all with Fortinet equipment. There's actually some unison between them. And what you have there is what I call the 100 Club. So you can have your VPN and your UTM security policies actually push through and sync between the devices. So for that, I'm actually going to show you what that looks like in the FortiOS. Here we go. So this is a FortiGate 60E DSL. I'm just going to log in. I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like in the FortiOS, but just exactly how much the Cisco application-centric infrastructure and the FortiGates do intertwine. It's not hard. You don't need to have a high level of programming knowledge. You can just come in here to your FortiGate. So this to load streaming video recording as well as giving voice at the same time. It can be a little bit hard on a processor chip that's an i5, but no matter. So we'll go here into this particular section called Fabric. And of the different Fabric section here, we go to what we call Fabric Connectors. And then we'll have a little button up here, which will say Create New. Wow. Come on, i5. Come on, thermal cooling. Here we go. So we go Create New up here in the top left. Here it is. The application-centric infrastructure by Cisco. We literally tick that particular icon, name the connector, put in the IP address of the Cisco ACI connector with a username and password, and we press OK. That's it. Now all of a sudden, then we've got some more information here on the right-hand side. This will now connect the two together. If we want to set up your VPN network with your different branches, and your different branches perhaps have some legacy Cisco infrastructure, we've got some templates that are already here integrated with Cisco, or you can just use the wizard. So here on the IPsec wizard within the actual FortiGate, it allows you to choose what your remote device type is with Cisco natively integrated in. So here's site to site, we can do Cisco, and for remote access, we can then say it's a Cisco client that's installed on it from there as well. So it's really easy, it's visual, it's there, it's not a whole bunch of hoops and that you have to jump through to be able to integrate Cisco with Fortinet. So if you do go to your clients and they happen to say to you, yeah, you know what, we've already got Cisco here, you could say that's fine. If you look at some of these independent assessments of the Cisco equipment, it doesn't have as much as Fortinet, all right, say it in a nice way, and then just go, don't worry, it is natively integrated into your FortiGate here as well. So if we go back to sort of some of the key terms that you can sort of phrase and say to your clients, you can say terms like, do you have visibility you require to make informed decisions? So this is around single pane of glass. Do you feel like you have control over your network? I mean, do you have policy sync across all the different parts? Remember, we looked at sort of the 10 different types of SMB product suites that you can have in an office. What are your corporate policy and how do you enforce them? Do you assess the effectiveness of your solution? What's your reporting look like for your current solution? Does everything roll up, or do you need to do a CSV sort of export and run everything through a third-party reporting platform? How long has it been since your last refresh cycle? Maybe the building has NBN, or maybe it has fiber. Is the current devices that it's got have enough throughput to actually cater for the bandwidth? From that capacity and planning standpoint, just because you have the equipment now, it's maybe only 2 years old, how long are you looking to actually get out of that equipment? What's the return on investment on there? Can it keep up with the speed of your business now that you're moving more things to cloud? Are there challenges in getting your security budget allocated? Well, what you can do with the Fortinet equipment is use that to show ROI. And when you brief your executive staff, do they have all the metrics they're looking for? Fortinet equipment allows you to do endpoint analysis as well as your cloud analysis as well as your infrastructure analysis. So all those metrics can normally answer the executive staff about where all the budget is going, so you can actually show and justify the ROI. So we've also got the CTAP. So if someone just simply says to you, I don't know, then roll out a CTAP. So with Wavelink, we can basically send out a 60E or a 300E to site, and then we can get you some metrics back from the existing infrastructure about what's actually there on site. and that intelligence is really going to help you be able to position the right Fortinet single pane of glass, a single vendor strategy for that particular partner. You've also got the ability to demo and you can purchase NFR equipment, which comes with enterprise licensing at around about 50% off RRP for you to use and demo in your own environment, or use in your own environment, so that perhaps you want some of that single pane of glass efficiency in your own reseller business. Then you've also got the partner portal, which has some really good battle cards. So a lot of the information you've seen here about the competitor is summed up in the asset library in the partner portal. But if you're busy and you sort of need some more sort of leg up or a hand, we can always white label our services with our pre-sales and marketing. So we've got dedicated marketing team and pre-sales team, which you could use on your opportunities or with your marketing to really help get the message out there about single pane of glass and how it integrates with the Fabric Ready partnerships as well.
So welcome back, team. What I'll do now is introduce Rod back to the mic, and just to give a bit of an intro, just for those that might have missed it. Rod's our resident Fortinet guru. He's had more than 20 years experience across Australia and New Zealand as a network engineer. So welcome, Rod.
Thank you, John. Great to be here today.
Awesome. Hey, so we did have a couple of questions asked throughout the presentation, Rod. So the first one being, has there been any changes to the 40 client?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think most people on the presentation will remember the changes that we went through back with version 6 of the 40 client, and a lot of the partners had a lot of problems understanding the SKUs and the upgrades. And unfortunately, we're about to go through that again, and we're here to sort of make that a lot easier for you. And we've got some presentations coming up around it, because as a whole, the 40 client is changing. Same features with some new features added in, but new licensing models and a couple of really important features that they've added to it. One is the best practice service, which is coming out. So when you're purchasing the 40 client now, you're purchasing the first year as best practice, and then you're purchasing additional years at the normal value. And that best practice service is a new feature that Fortinet is introducing across not just the 40 client, but a number of other products in its range. And the idea behind it is, for 1 year, they've got a specialized team that they've set up. Now, that team sits somewhere between TAC and the professional services team. And their job is to help the customer onboard over a 1 year period. So the kind of things that they're going to do, they're going to sit with the customer or the partner, and they're going to work through a design. So in this case, if we thought about the 40 client, it would be things like, how many users do you want to connect from what locations, what features do you want to turn on, and then actually go through a proactive engagement where they're helping design and encouraging the customer to turn on those features, get them configured correctly, and then turn on additional features, or at least explore those features to get the most out of the product, which I think is a really good thing. It doesn't take the professional services away from the partner. They're not a professional services team, so they're adding value and creating more engagement with the customer around the product, because some of these products customers purchase and they may only use the SSL VPN section of it. And that's kind of limiting them to all the opportunities that the 40 client product has, because it's a fully feature-rich product. Some of the other things that, and obviously this is happening with the new client. The new client is obviously version 7, so it will work with the 40OS version 7. It will do everything that the existing client will do, but in a few months' time, and probably Q3 of this year, you'll see the 40 SASE offering come into alignment. And that's going to be quite exciting, because this is Zero Trust networking. And essentially what it's going to do is remove the requirement for nailed up SSL VPNs to be in place. So if we took an example of that and we said, well, look, we've got some remote users, They go up to Office 365, they go to Dropbox, great. We've got secure connections out to that through the web, and the client obviously has the web filtering features in there, so we know they're protected. But we've also got to create a tunnel up to a head office where we've got one in-house application that we need them to access. Essentially, we're going to be able to access that via straight encrypted SSL tunnel rather than an SSL VPN, which means that we're not actually going to have a VPN tunnel in place. And that then means that those problems of always having an always-on VPN configured for our clients, we remove that provenality from a design or implementation. So some really interesting things happening. And while it's still a few months away, we will be crossing over to the new SKUs in probably about, I'd say within the next 6 weeks to 8 weeks. And it'll be quite exciting to see some of the changes that are coming in there. But we will obviously create some presentation sessions and some enablement sessions for the teams before we get to that point. Back to you, John.
Thanks for that, Rod. People have come armed with their questions today, Rod, so I've got one more for you, and that is, are fabric connectors an extra license feature for a FortiGate?
No, they're not. The automation, the fabric connectors, the stitches within the FortiOS is standard within the environment. Today, most of the Forti fabric connectors that we work with, and there's some changes in the operating system between version 6.2 and 6.4, how you access them. So on the video, you saw one way, that it's slightly different in the 6.4 release. Normal connectors that we would create today would be the Forti Manager, the Forti Analyzer, Forti EMS, and then there's a lot of cloud ones as well, which are really useful when we want to do automation into the cloud. So, for example, if we wanted to connect into AWS and into the Lambda environment, or maybe we wanted to connect into Azure and we wanted to get to their Azure Connect feature. Essentially what we're doing is we're getting into the back end of where we've configured both of those cloud environments, and we're creating telemetry between our on-prem device and our cloud environment, so that when we make changes within the cloud, that's reported back. So a really good example of using these connectors in say, a cloud environment would be that if we made an IP change on one of the subnets or one of the devices behind a FortiGate in the cloud, that change is then replicated through the various environments, being AWS and Azure, back to the security fabric, and then is replicated. So if we change an IP address up in the cloud, it's replicated to the gateway on the cloud, replicated across down to our on-prem and any of the branch offices. So we don't have to go in and make those firewall changes to say that things have changed, which is a really cool use of the fabric connectors today.
Thanks for that, Rod. Okay, well, look, we don't have any more questions, so I think that concludes our InfoBytes session today. I will state, if anyone is seeking more information, you can always reach us at marketing@wavelength.com.au. You will be receiving an email from us shortly. It's going to have the pre-record. We'll detail next steps, how to reach out to the team if you wanted to speak to myself in marketing or Rod in a bit more detail. But other than that, thank you very much, and enjoy your day. Cheers. Thanks for joining us, Rod, and everyone else.
Thank you, John.